Hello and welcome to Queendom TV. Today I'm going to be talking about a question that I want to address. Is the industry responsible for the breakdown and the breakup of Little Mix? Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you don't know why I'm talking about Little Mix, you guys can check out my Jesy Nelson playlist and you guys will catch up with everything that's going on if you guys start from the beginning. And it'll all make sense when you get here and you join us on this part of the journey. Now, if you guys are already here, you'll know that we've been discussing certain things. And in my previous video, I was asking you guys and telling you my thoughts about, the question, should I still support, Little Mix or the rest of Little Mix, and I talked a lot in that video about them as a group. And I said that was going to delve more into the industry. And here we are. Now, the reason why I want to delve into the industry, also before I forget, don't forget to subscribe, by the way, guys, if you enjoy my video. What I don't want to forget here, what I want to get into here, guys, is in my previous video, I was kind of throwing out there to you guys, that, things might not be as simple as we think that they are, and so I think it's right for everybody to go with your own convictions, because really we don't know what's going on behind closed doors as much as we've heard certain things. And obviously the girls have revealed a lot of things through their books, through their interviews, through their music, etc., through their own words. But even still, we can never know fully what's going on behind closed doors. But what I will say, and a few things that I wanted to highlight that I feel are important, and I feel like, I just want to address in the beginning of all of this that I appreciate for all of us that there is an element of us feeling like there is still not been enough justice for this whole Jesy situation with regards to blackfishing and everything. And honestly, the part of the reason, the fact that we've not really had the conclusion we deserve, I feel, which is, for some apologies to be said, some acknowledgement and some accountability to be taken, etc. I feel that we should still discuss, the things that led up to this whole thing as a whole, and what was going on before. Because obviously prior to Jesy coming out with boys and then Leanne sending the message to Nohan, the girls had a long career together. And I think a lot of the issues that Jesy spoke about that affected her, I think affected the girls as well in different ways. Of course, she had specific things that was more specific to her, particularly like with her body type. And I'm not saying that the other girls didn't have any body issues or eating disorders or anything, because obviously some of them have, they've spoken about it. I just mean that she has a different body, so it's different. The problems might be similar, but different at the end of the day, right? And so I've been thinking, and I was looking into Fifth Harmony as well, like I said to you guys, and like what's been going on with them, how they've come together, and just a lot of the trends we see in the entertainment industry and Hollywood, as I like to call it. And one of the things that I've started to notice as a trend, and you will notice this if you've been watching a lot of my videos for a while, is this whole trend of a star becoming pretty well known at a youngish age. And when I say young, I'm talking about anywhere between child and like under 30, to be honest with you. And then and then progressively throughout their career, they have like their peak moment, their heyday, and then a lot of them, there is some kind of a breakdown stage, right? Breakdown, break up, one of the two or both. And I've attributed this in the past. I've said that the reason why I feel like this happens in the industry is because I feel like the industry preys on vulnerability. A lot of the people in the industry who are putting groups together, who are leading labels, who are leading management companies, or agencies and stuff, they are preying on vulnerable people. Why? Because they're easier to convince to do certain things, or they're more naive. They don't understand how the industry works. They're just going to be like, yes, 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 I'll do whatever you say because you're saying that this is how I'm going to become famous, right? And I think there was an element of that even with Little Mix, because as I highlighted in my previous video, and I said I would delve into this stuff more in another video, the girls in Little Mix at the end of the day, they were all 4 different girls who came into Little Mix, right? And they all had 4 different distinctive personalities. One thing I think that was not focused on enough, between them in terms of their branding, but also in terms of us as the people watching, is is their individuality. I think one of the reasons there has been the types of disagreements that we've seen, like in terms of, you know, Leanne being the one to speak out, and Jesy being the one who eventually walked out, and then maybe Perry being a bit quieter. I think this is also, and when I say quieter, I mean quieter about this situation, about the whole scandal, by the way. I think this is kind of a way of highlighting, you know, the fact that when you're in these group settings, right, there has to be, as much as you're having a group of singers, you're having a group of different people. And with that, there comes a responsibility to make sure that everybody is being looked after and their individual needs are being met, you know, as far as their personality. It kind of reminds me of, like, if you have and I'm not a parent, so just throwing that out there, but if you have children, right, I've heard a lot of parents say how, you know, all of the children are different. You might have to parent them differently. You might have to teach them lessons differently. You might have to discipline them differently. They have different needs, right? You might have one child who is always really, really independent. You have another child that's maybe more dependent. There's nothing wrong with whichever way either two of those children are, but they have different needs. And I feel like one of the things that has happened with Little Mix, with the industry, is that because of their differences in personality, but then also being subject to the same situation, I feel like there's kind of a clash that goes on within that. And the clash that I'm talking about is, right, so maybe Jesy, let's say, who some people said was the mum of the group, right? Interestingly enough, turns out that Ali from Fifth Harmony was also seen to be the mum of the group kind of vibe, right? Now, what tends to happen with mum type figures of groups, especially when they're not physical mums, they tend to be there for everybody else and everybody else can go to them, but they don't necessarily feel like they have anybody to go to themselves. That's kind of what happened with Jesy. You know, a lot of you guys have talked about how the other girls said that she was the mum and that they could go to her about anything and she would always listen and she'd always be there, etc., etc. I feel like a lot of her issues that she's had, and the reason why she had to leave in the end, is because it was like, well, who's going to be there for me? And especially because I feel like, honestly, a lot of the issues they faced, I feel like they faced as a four, as in like the whatever was happening to all four of them. But it was just how they reacted to that was different. I personally feel like when it comes to Leanne, the kind of vibe I get from her, also from her interview, is that she's more of the kind of person who would, rather than say this thing that's happening to me isn't right, she would rather try to show her strength by rising to the occasion. And this is a personality type that some people have, you know, where like something might be being done to them wrongly, and rather than saying that thing is wrong or even acknowledging it, they might feel like, I'm gonna put up with it, or I'm gonna deal with it extremely well because I'm a strong person, or I want to be seen in this way, you know. That might be where she's coming from. I do to some extent think that's where Leanne is coming from, because I kind of got this vibe from the girls in general, listening to the different interviews and stuff that I've been seeing from a lot of stuff that you guys have sent and everything, that the girls seem to be kind of fed up with Jesy wanting to step out, whereas I feel like Jesy is the one who cares about everyone and she wants the best for everyone. So I think as well, when things are going wrong for others, you know, as well as her, it hurts her a lot, again, being the mum figure. So it's like for her on the other spectrum to Leanne, she can't just overlook certain things. She can't just try and rise to the occasion, or her emotions are more invested in a slightly different way, you know. And so I think these kinds of things, if they were in a group where they were being well looked after and they were where they were being well looked after and they were being treated properly as artists, as musicians, then a lot of these issues would not even be issues. They would be positive things. And again, I refer to the Spice Girls again. And again, they were the ones who really directed their career a lot, you know, ever since the situation they had with the first guy who was who put them together, which is, you know, they would appreciate each other's skills and they would help each other in certain areas. You know, some of them were more wanted to stand up more for certain things and they would speak out. Maybe, you know, like how Jerry went and asked, you know, about for the other writer, like, would you take us on if we weren't with the, what, I don't know what you want to call him, the manager, I guess, that they started with. And then you know, you might have somebody like some of the other members might not feel as much like stepping out and speaking about stuff like that, you know, or doing moves like that, but that might be also what they want, you know. So when you're in a group situation and you can all understand each other and care about each other, it's a lot easier for you to highlight and utilize each other's strengths and weaknesses. But then when you're in a situation like where you're in an industry, like the industry the way that it is, I feel like it makes it more difficult. And I think that's why Jesy and Leanne came to this clash. And I think it would have always been Jesy, and it would have always been Jesy and Leanne, because to me, as one of you guys said, and I kind of agree, it seems like Perry was less like what do you call it, she was been a lot quieter. One of you guys said that you feel like maybe she's just not wanted, she kind of is still supporting Jesy, but she doesn't want to say anything because she doesn't really want to ruffle any feathers, which I totally agree in a way and can understand, in the sense that to her, she probably thinks more about you know, just the time that they spent together. Maybe the blackfishing thing wasn't a big deal, bearing in mind the fact that Leanne being who she is in the group and coming forward about stuff like blackfishing, it makes it hard for, you know, even Jade or Perry to actually even further, it makes it even more difficult for them to come forward about their honest opinions. And speaking of Jade, by the way, when I was watching Jade's interview, she was a lot shyer, you know, in those days when she first auditioned. And so to me, I was kind of looking at it like, well, I wonder if even her, the way she's responding now, is a little bit more of a persona that she's taken on over the years, because this is what people have to do, right? They have to survive. When you have to survive, you know, people have different tactics in life to survive, whether the tactic is, you know, to like your tactic might be to shy away and run away. Your tactic might be to take on a particular type of persona and just live up to that. I talked about this with Paris Hilton. She went through a lot of trauma, and so this version of Paris Hilton that most people see and think, even up to the voice that she does, it's not really her. It's a persona that she kind of takes on, you know, for the sake of protecting herself, you know. But realistically, her voice is actually quite different. I actually really like her natural voice. And also, she's highly intelligent. She's actually a crazy businesswoman, and she works extremely hard. You know, so I think a lot of people, they take on, you know, they might have to take on a certain persona to survive. And I kind of feel like with Jade, it kind of gives me that vibe a little bit. I kind of feel like when I see with Jade, I feel like she's one of those people where, like, and again, these are just all my thoughts, and there's a reason why I'm sharing my thoughts, right? I feel like she's one of those people where she would have liked an opportunity to continue her proving her strength by, you know, supporting the things going on with Leanne and so on and so forth, right? And I can see like Leanne being the kind of person behind closed doors who probably says stuff to her her family and stuff like, well, I went through this and I'm fine, and I did this and I'm okay. Like, I don't understand why Jesy had to do this, like why it got so hard to her, like, because there is this kind of narrative, even with like some of the toxic mixes, that some of the people are saying to me like, oh, well, the other girls went through stuff and they didn't have to do this and they didn't do that, like this whole comparison of trauma thing, which I think is extremely unhelpful in life in this day and age. I don't believe in doing that, as I've said before. And so I feel like even with Jade, she's kind of playing up to a particular persona. And I feel like with Perry, it's almost like she's just trying to do what she said she wanted to do, which was be a singer. And I think deep down, all of them would have just preferred, especially with everything that's gone down, whether they admit it or not, I think deep down, they would really just prefer to be able to continue on with like a solo career at this point. I really feel like at this point, it's like, can I just, like, it would be easier for them to just go along with like what they had initially had planned to do and planned to be, rather than having to like, you know, deal with all these different personalities. Because like I said before, and I'll say it again, ultimately they didn't put themselves together, they got put together. And one thing that I think is important about people that get put together, and one thing that I want to highlight as well, you know, is first of all, they might not have chosen we might never know, they might never admit if they would have really wanted to be with those other girls or what they really thought, right? Because it might sound really ungrateful. Some people might take it as a really ungrateful what do you call it, they might take it as people being really ungrateful, and also they might be just genuinely happy with how it turned out in the end, even though it wasn't what they intended. But the other thing that I don't like about this, right, and this is why I say, is the industry responsible? When they were saying, like, when I was looking at the auditions of the girls, and they were saying, and then they had, who was it? I can't remember who it was. But, you know, they always have this notion with the groups, when they're going to put a group together, right? Now that I look back, it all seems very staged, by the way. Now that I'm looking back watching this, even like when I was watching the stuff about Fifth Harmony, I was like, this seems very staged, like the way that they're trying to say, like, because with Fifth Harmony, it had Kelly Rowland, and she was like, they were all good individually, but each of them, they just had something they were missing. I'm not sure if it was for Fifth Harmony or for Little Mix. I think it's Fifth Harmony. Look how, like, I'm losing it now from watching all this different stuff from different people. I'm like, who was where and who was who? But either way, either way, when the groups come together, they always used to say this thing, because I watched a lot of them. I watched Little Mix get put together and everything. There was always this thing of individually they weren't quite there, but as a group it da. And honestly, that is where I feel like the beginning of the whole breakdown that is the result of the industry starts. Because for me now, years later, right, this all happened in 2011. Little Mix were put together. We're now in 2022, right? It's been 11 years. So the way I'm looking at it now, there is no reason why those girls individually could not have just been put through the show and got all the same vocal training and dance training and this and that they would get in the show, through the show, and succeeded as solo artists, right? Now, here's the catch. I do think, and this is on my personal opinion, that different girls in the different groups, right, that different members of groups were more likely to succeed solo than others, or was maybe more talented, in my opinion. And I'm not going to say who I think was more or less talented, because I don't want it to become about who was more or less talented, right? So I do think in a way that what they were doing is they were just trying to orchestrate it wasn't about the girls, it wasn't about their talent, it wasn't about what the girls wanted, it was about what the industry wanted. They wanted to find groups that they could put together, they could make this thing that was very sellable, and that's what they were concerned about. That's why I feel like you went from Little Mix, right? They probably looked at the issues that took place, the fact that, the issues that took place, and then they had Fifth Harmony. How is this Fifth Harmony different to Little Mix? Well, they were more diverse, like in terms of looking at them, they were significantly more diverse. So they're probably thinking, well, we're going to stretch across all the different a much wider target market, because we've got all these different kinds of people in this one group. And the reality is, a lot of the time we do support the person that we either we look like or we relate to the most. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But I think that's something that the industry utilizes. So I think the fact that they started the girls from that standpoint, like, well, you wouldn't have really done it by being able to succeed by yourself. I think it's like that mentality traps them into feeling like they have to stay into what they're in, and exactly the way that it is and the way that it's being sold to them, i.e. they feel like I have to be in Little Mix, and I have to be in Little Mix specifically the way I'm being told, because I don't know what would sell. I have to trust the people who are in the industry who know, when in reality, as I mentioned in another video, which guys will see tomorrow, where I talk about, the power always being with with the fans. The power's really with the fans, because the fans are the ones who dictate how many albums are being sold, and how many tickets are being sold for tours, and if merch is being bought, etc. But they make it seem in the industry like, well, you need us and you need to listen to us, and you wouldn't have succeeded on your own. And I think trapping them even in that mentality is where this kind of goes downhill, because then they start to look at this group as almost like something that they need, but it's also something that they didn't put together themselves, any four of them individually. So then what I think happens now, what's happened over time, is they've all gone through a bunch of things. I think in the beginning they were all very well meaning, they were all very much intended to try and get to know these girls more. They probably did really form a sisterhood. I think when you go through certain things in life, a lot of things in life, just being around people for a particular period of time and going through stuff with them, you do tend to form a bond. So I know I said in one of my other videos that I don't know if there was ever a sisterhood. And maybe there was at some point in the beginning, genuinely. Again, I don't know. But maybe there really was. And I don't want to ignore the fact that I feel like it came across in that video like there wasn't maybe ever a sisterhood. To a large extent, I think that sisterhood died early. I don't think that it's because of the girls necessarily. I think it's the industry. And this is the point of me making this video, because I feel like a lot of the time what the industry loves to do, right? When I say the industry, right, the industry are like this, they're like they, like when they say they, and they're like, they are watching, they are doing this. I kind of feel like that's the industry. And one thing I've noticed about the industry is they do this thing where they'll let everybody who's visible be the ones doing the fighting, and meanwhile behind closed doors, they're the puppet masters. They're the ones who are making these things happen, right? But they'll make it look like to those of us watching that it's like it's just the people that we see. So for example, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of an example right now, but I was kind of thinking of Britney Spears, and just how, like, with her, there was a lot of stuff going on with her, like in terms of people are claiming that she's taking drugs, she's done this to the baby, she's done this and that. But in reality, a lot of us didn't know about anybody called Lou M. Taylor. A lot of us didn't know that James Spears was doing a whole bunch of things behind closed doors. So you know, they make it seem like it's the people we see, so we get caught up in scandal and having opinions, when in reality the people that we're complaining about are really both puppets in a situation. And I kind of said this even in one of my videos about Little Mix, and I took it down. I don't know if I'll put it back up again. I might put it back up again in the playlist, and it was one where I was saying maybe the industry is playing both sides. I don't know about Jesy's side. I don't think so right now. She seems to be really doing more for herself. But even the fact that Leanne has stepped away, like, let's not ignore the fact that Leanne has stepped away and she's now being managed by her own sister. To me, suggests what I thought anyway, which is they were all in a bad situation, you know, and Jesy was the first one to step out of that bad situation, you know, and do what was best for her, you know. And ultimately, again, that's why I think a lot of these groups end up going solo in the end. Because why? When they were put together, they weren't even necessarily put together because they were a good group together. You know, like even with the circling back to the Spice Girls, because again, they're the reason why these groups are being put together today. You know, they spent a lot of time with the Spice Girls, you know, testing out their chemistry, and the girls lived together like for like a year. You know, these are types of things that that the likes of Little Mix didn't get to have. They would have had however many weeks that the X Factor went on for, right? After the auditions, thrown together, all these live shows. So they're already being thrown into the lifestyle that they're going to be into, right? Which is performing and singing and whatever in costume. And then after that, they go on to the tour, then they go on to the next thing, then they're writing an album, and then it's just gone. And now we fast forward 10 years now, or 11 years now, and here we are. You know, so I think with a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, we have to remember that they didn't necessarily put themselves in that group, and there's a lot that can be suggested from that. And the fact that they were kind of convinced, I personally think, that it was going to be hard for them to go out on their own. Because when I hear these women sing, like especially now, like when I heard Jesy's voice by itself, and this kind of talent, like the types of talents that come out of these shows like X Factor, America's Got Talent, these are really talented people, because they're not the people who like an industry person found and thought that they looked good and had the right look or whatever, and they tried to make them sound better with auto-tune. A lot of these people are people who actually can sing. So you find like Jesy can actually sing really well live. You find that the members of Fifth Harmony can sing very well live. You know, even the Spice Girls made a point to say, we can sing really well live. Again, another thing that irritated me about them was the fact that people were trying to say they can't sing. I'm like, how can you say they can't sing when they sing live? You know what I mean? But it's people telling them something so that they believe it, so that so many people have told them that they can't sing, right? It puts them in like this mental prison where they think, oh, we need this and we need that because I can't sing, I can't do this. That was even a problem. One of the problems Jerry had is that she wasn't as well trained of a dancer as some of the other girls, so it took her a while to pick up the dance routines, you know. Whereas to us watching, we're like, what the heck are you talking about? Jerry can dance, like she's great, you know what I mean? But to how the industry works, right? They're the ones who sow these seeds of doubt and all these different seeds in the minds of the people that we support. And I feel like that's what happened with Little Mix. I think for them, a lot of them, they were convinced for a long time that this is the only way it was going to work. I'm sure at times when they wanted to leave or they wanted to do different things that we may never even hear about, they were convinced that nope, it's not going to work by yourself, or nope, you need us, or nope, whatever it is that they said to them, right, to convince them to stay. When in reality, they were so talented already. But this is how the industry works, and I talk about this a lot on my channel, how the industry is always trying to convince people that like, oh, you need this, you need a label to succeed, you need this, you need our help, like no one's going to listen to you. It's like, no, you are the talent, they are the talent, you know. In the same way that I'm talking in my next video about fans and how you are the fans, you have the power, like, and you guys can watch that video tomorrow. Like, you, as for them, they are the talent. Like, no one has a job if not for them, you know. And I think so much of the time, because they don't know that and they don't appreciate, they don't understand that, you know, and they're made to think that that doesn't matter, they don't succeed the way that they're supposed to, you know. And it's just such a shame, honestly, it really is. And I feel like, you know, in terms of what was I going to say? So I feel like because they're in that mentality, right, they go along with something that isn't working for them, but then eventually they realize that they can just do it. Eventually, I think they mature enough, they grow up enough that they're like, wait a minute, I can do this on my own. Wait a minute, I will succeed. Wait a minute, like, I have fans, they like me for me. And I think when they get to that realization that they have fans who like them for who they are, that's when the whole game changes, you know. And so I think we've got to be really careful about, you know, recognizing, not ignoring the fact that the people in the industry they really, who run the industry, they really like to prey on vulnerable people who came onto X Factor hoping to get their big break, hoping to be seen, hoping to be heard, you know, who then are going to take any opportunity that's there. And again, I'm going to talk in one of my other videos about contracts, and the thing about contracts, particularly non-disclosure agreements, and you guys should check that out, because one thing about contracts as well, and this is the other thing, when people go into X Factor, right, they sign up to obligations. Like there are certain obligations that they are signed up for. And I might actually, if you guys want to hear about this in a video, I might actually look into that and we can discuss that if that's something you guys would be interested in. So let me know if you've been interested in me doing that, right? But there are certain obligations that they sign up to, that now that I'm signed with you, I'm going to be signed to this record label, maybe for this length of time. I'm going to do this tour and I'm going to release this number of albums with this people. Like there are certain terms they sign up to. Now, in when you're a singer, you know, that nobody knows yet, or not many people know yet, that those things sound fun to just jump into. Bearing in mind, you don't know what those things are going to mean when you get there. Bearing in mind, you don't know what it's like to actually do those things when you're in that position. And so I feel like all of those things coming together, right, at the end of the day, I feel like for the groups like Little Mix, I do blame the industry more for the breakdown. I do blame the industry more because I feel like the industry took advantage of a group of people, a group of girls who, as they do a lot, by the way, took advantage of a group of girls who are all talented and individual in different ways. They've actually got 4 completely different sounding voices. So I don't know why they had to be a girl group like that, but I get why it works, because that's why I think their music sounds good, because they do have like a variety. But they all had their own different vibe going on. I mean, even if you just look at the way that they all showed up dressed, even if you look at the songs that they chose, they took those girls, they put them into a group, you know, and then they could have just let it be a good thing that people were appreciating it. But as always, they do too much. Like I said in the other video, they don't have to do as much as they do. They don't have to overwork them, but they do, because they're trying to make the most money they possibly can. Like I mentioned in my video about the music industry, you guys should check it out. And I talk about how what they do with people is use, abuse, and dispose. And that's what they do, you know. And then and then the other thing that they do, and this is a big part of it, is they get into their heads that they need these people. They break them down and think, oh, you need this person, you need that person. Why? Like, think about the fact that the girls auditioned and they didn't necessarily think that they needed anybody. And I'm not saying that everybody knows and know that no one's delusional, because we've all seen delusional people go on X Factor and stuff. So let's not pretend. Like, I'm a big advocate. You guys know that I always say you got to know what you're actually gifted with. Like, you can't just, like, I don't believe people can just do something they're not gifted at, you know. But I think even something you're gifted at, you got to work at, which is what I think them trying to say to the girls that, like, oh, you need this, you nearly had it, but we think you'd be better as a group. It's like, if she nearly had it, why can't you just individually train all of them individually into their own thing? Why, if they nearly had it, why does the solution have to be putting them with other people, as if you're saying like that they're not good enough on their own? And I think the industry, just like how a lot of things in the world preys off of the fact that we as people always have this tendency to not believe that we're good enough, you know. And that's why I'm a massive advocate to try and speak against that, because that way of thinking, a lot of the time, it makes us easy to manipulate. It makes us vulnerable to thinking that other people always know better, where sometimes our God-given intuition, our God-given insight and discernment is telling us otherwise. It's saying, no, actually you could do this by yourself. Because look at Jesy now, 10 years later, 11 years later, now she's finally having the career she really could have always had, really and truly. And she could have had it with way less mental health issues, way less disputes, and so on and so forth. You know, she could have, for all we know, she could have just been friends and met, you know, Leanne and Jade and Perry at the show. They could have just made friends. You know, they could have, maybe they would have chosen to come together and do some music just because they all were together on the show, you know, and they really liked each other. And maybe later on they did some collaborations and stuff, you know. That's what could have been done. Or if people really wanted to, because this is the thing that I feel like the industry doesn't do, and this is what I think leads to the breakdown, was led to the breakdown of Little Mix as well, / also breakup, is they don't really stop, in my opinion, to cultivate what that individual person wants to achieve. Like, they should be looking at them and saying, what is the career you want to have, and let's help you birth what's already inside of you. And I keep talking about this, but because this is what I really believe. Well, they don't do that. They're like, oh, you got a good voice. Well, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to put all these people together. And then we put all these people together and then go. And then eventually, like I said, it either takes its toll on people, because I believe, you know, living outside of what is destined for you it will take a toll on you, because it's like you're living a fake, you're not really living the life that you're supposed to be living, right? So I think that happens. And then I also think the other thing that happens is eventually they just want to step out, because they're like, you know what, I want to go back to, because it's not, I don't even think it's that they're breaking up. I don't think a lot of the times when people break up it's as deep as we think. I think a lot of the time it's genuinely, okay, now I just want to have the career that I wanted to have 10 years ago, you know? So I don't know, guys. I feel like I've said a lot of different things, and I know my video has been so like weird, I guess, but it's because I've just been really thinking about this whole thing and trying to see this from all different angles. And I kind of feel like, based on how things were, based on how vulnerable the girls were, them being younger, them, you know, being at the start of their careers, and them being in, because, you know, like when you're in a situation where somebody has more power than you, you know, there's like a, I can't remember what they call, I can't remember what they call that. There's like a term for when somebody has you're in an unfair situation, because you're in an unfair negotiation almost, because the other person has significantly more power over you, kind of thing. So like in this sense, Simon Cowell, the X Factor and everybody, they are it's kind of an unfair negotiation for the girls, even, because they don't know what they're signing themselves up for, and they don't have the power, as far as they believe, to achieve what they think, what they want to achieve, without those people. So they think, you know, and so then it makes it easy for them to always feel the need to push outside of what they really want. And I think that's what the industry capitalizes off of. Like, you might have had, for all we know, behind the scenes, the girls always were trying to say, well, we don't really want to like that song, that's not really our vibe or whatever. And then in the end, they were like, what do you call it? Well, you're just going to have to, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to do what we say, because we know what's best, and you're just going to have to go with it. And I kind of believe that eventually they did get to that point, because I feel like when Jesy left, the vibe I got from the remaining girls, especially like more so there was like a clip in Odd One Out where Jesy said she wanted to redo her part, and the girls weren't happy about it. And I felt like at that point that some of the girls had got to the stage where they just accepted what they were in. They accepted that this wasn't really what they wanted it to be, but they were happy enough being pop stars in that way, even if it's not maybe what they thought. And I guess this is another difference. I'm going to talk about this in another video, a difference between pop stars and artists, which also Lauren from Fifth Harmony mentioned. And she talked about that. And it's something that I wasn't able to put into words as well until she put it that way. But there is a difference between people who are in the industry, who are there just because they like the lifestyle, maybe they can sing, and then artists who look at their music, their albums, and everything as an art form, as like something that they're trying to create and cultivate out of themselves. You know, there's a difference between that and just maybe, oh, I just wanted to be famous, or oh, I just wanted to be a famous singer, you know. And so I think that's also where some of the division came between Jesy and some of the other girls, because I feel like for her it was really about, I want to do what the music I have, you know, that's what I came here for. Whereas maybe some of them, as time went on, either they never wanted that, maybe some of them genuinely just wanted to be pop stars. But then, and to me, somebody who I think of who might be fit into that category might be somebody like Jade, for example. Or they started out that they wanted to be artists, but now they're okay with being pop stars, you know, which again, if that's what they're okay with, I'm not mad at it. But I think a lot of people started out because they wanted to have the career they wanted to have. They wanted to be their own individual artist and create things that they love. And that's why a lot of artists you'll find today will go out of their way to say, you know what, we don't want I want to be able to have my own music. I want to be able to represent myself, etc, etc. I want to be able to write the music I want to write. Because why? Because it's their art form. That's what they got into this for. But unfortunately, because there are a lot of people who are happy to just be pop stars, which is fine if that's what you want, but it does also work against the people who want to be artists, because then the pop stars just say yes, 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 as long as they get to have their platform, perform, have their albums. A lot of them are probably happy they don't have to write their own songs. I think we estimate how many people actually write their own songs anymore. Again, the Spice Girls used to write their own songs. So that's something that's really impressive, I think, and says a lot about why they got such big fan base. Anyways, you guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you think that the industry is to blame for the breakdown and the breakup of Little Mix? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Other than that, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to let me, I've already said about the comments. Don't forget to like this video. Other than that, God bless you all, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.